Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we really get into the weeds on complex topics, break down the sources,
Yeah.
and hopefully help you get smarter faster.
Yeah.
So today we're tackling something huge, language learning. But not just, the usual grind. We're framing this more like like a scientific mission. How to leverage things like reading and input to get fluent and get fluent fast. Because let's be honest, the biggest hurdle, the real enemy for anyone learning anything is just forgetting it all, right?
That's exactly it. Forgetting is the default. And what we're exploring today, it isn't your standard, dusty grammar textbook approach. We're digging into the brain's actual wiring. Our source material, it comes from this fascinating background, an opera singer needing languages like German, Italian, French, Russian, like yesterday. And the method developed is less a course and more a course, like a well-oiled machine. It's designed to take whatever time you can commit each day and just turn that into steady, automatic progress.
I like that machine analogy. Efficiency. It reminds me of that anecdote in the material about mastery in fencing, the master fencer. They aren't thinking, okay, rule 7, be parry now.
No, not about.
They just move.
Yeah.
It's automatic, unconscious competence.
Exactly. And that's fluency, isn't it? Automaticity. Being able to just walk up to someone, open your mouth, and have the right words, the right grammar just flow out without that constant, painful translation happening in your head.
Which sounds amazing, but also maybe impossible, especially if you can't just pack up and move to, say, Berlin for a year.
Right. That's the barrier for most of us. Life gets in the way. So this system, it's about, well, the source calls it cheating, but it's really about working with the brain's rules, obsessively focusing on how memory actually works to make sure the time you do spend actually sticks permanently.
Okay, let's lay it out for everyone listening. Our mission in this deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
Cut through the usual confusing methods. We're going to unpack the 3 big keys to learning a language fast, and crucially, show you the practical steps, the techniques to actually rewire your brain so you can beat that forgetting curve. So the biggest challenge, as you mentioned, is that most of us aren't immersed. Immersion works wonders because, like the source says, you literally have no time to forget. You're bombarded.
Constant input, constant need to communicate.
But yeah, moving to rural Vermont to learn French isn't exactly practical for most people.
Yeah.
So if we can't just change our entire environment, what's the alternative? We have to change the internal process.
Exactly. We have to understand and leverage the neuroscience of how memories actually form and consolidate. And the power behind this whole approach comes down to a fundamental principle of neuroscience, often called Hebb's law. Basically, neurons that fire together wire together.
Right. The connections get stronger with use.
Precisely. Memories aren't like little files stored neatly away. They're more like complex webs, interconnected pathways of neurons. To make a memory permanent, truly effortless to recall, you need to make those pathways incredibly strong, really robust, resistant to decay.
Okay, so how do we build those super strong pathways? The source lays out 5 principles. Let's kick off with the first one, which is all about making that initial impression count. Principle 1, make memories more memorable.
Yeah, this is crucial because your brain is designed to forget. It's a filtering machine. Think about it. You're bombarded with information constantly. Most of it irrelevant. So if you encounter a new foreign word, like the Icelandic word mjör, it means mead, your brain's default is to just toss it, unless you process it deeply. If you only look at the letters, the structure, gone in seconds. That's shallow processing.
But if you connect it to something more, the sound, the meaning, maybe a feeling or a personal experience.
Now you're talking. That's deep processing. You need to hit multiple angles simultaneously, sound, concept, and crucially, personal connection.
The source mentions that levels of processing study, which really nails this.
It does. It's a classic. They gave students word lists. One group answered structural questions like, is the word bear in capital letters? Very shallow.
Okay.
Another group answered questions that required personal connection like, do you like pizza?
And the results?
Huge difference. People remembered something like 6 times more pizza than bears.
Wow. 6 times.
Because answering, do you like pizza, forces your brain to light up multiple areas at once. You hear the word, you access the meaning, you probably flash on a personal memory, that amazing slice you had last week, maybe even feel a little pleasure. That broad activation creates a much, much stronger memory trace.
So the immediate takeaway for anyone listening is ditch those basic flashcards, right? The ones with just a foreign word on one side and English on the other.
Absolutely. Ditch them. That's a bear card. Minimal processing, maximum forgetting. You need pizza cards.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Which brings us neatly to the next 2 principles. which seem to fly in the face of traditional study advice. Principle 2, maximize laziness, and Principle 3, don't review, recall. I mean, my first instinct, and probably most people's, is that more grinding, more repetition must be better.
Yeah, the no pain, no gain fallacy of studying. And it's exactly why people get frustrated and quit. Look, rote repetition, just hammering something into your head over and over, it's not very effective for building strong, long-term, retrievable memories. It mostly builds recognition.
Recognition meaning,
Mm.
like you see the word and think, yeah, I've seen that before.
Exactly. But can you pull it out of thin air when you actually need to use it? Probably not. That requires recall. So the truly efficient path, the quote-unquote lazy route, is to study something new just until you can successfully repeat it once without looking. Building happens later, thanks to Principle 3.
Hmm.
Forcing retrieval or recall.
Okay, so this is where testing comes in, like actively trying to remember something without looking at the answer. The
Yeah.
blank sheet of paper idea.
Precisely. Testing yourself is studying, but it's incredibly potent studying. The research here is compelling. Spending just 5 minutes testing yourself on material can be as effective as spending 25 minutes just passively rereading it.
5 versus 25 minutes. That's a huge difference in efficiency.
It's massive, and here's why. The effort of successfully retrieving a memory triggers a powerful neurochemical response. When you struggle a bit and then manage to pull that word or concept out, boom, your amygdala signals importance, your hippocampus gets involved, and you get a surge of dopamine.
Dopamine, the reward chemical.
Yeah, but here it acts like a save button for the memory. It tells your brain, hey, this piece of information was important. We needed it. Keep it.
The source calls it a drug-fueled memory party. A bit dramatic, maybe, but the effect is real. That effortful recall chemically reinforces the neural pathway. So the struggle is actually productive. The brain interprets that effort as significance. I worked hard for this, must be important.
You got it. It's tapping into a very old evolutionary system. Which leads us to the next and maybe trickiest principle. Principle 4, wait, don't tell me.
Okay, wait. This sounds like you want the recall, the test, to be hard.
Exactly. Memory tests, these recall attempts, they are most effective when they are challenging, right on the edge of forgetting.
Whoa, okay. How on earth do you time that perfectly? Especially when you're learning hundreds, maybe thousands of words. That sounds impossible to manage manually.
It would be practically impossible manually. And that's where the research gives us the crucial insight. We know that memories decay over time along a predictable curve. The test is most powerful right before the memory trace completely disappears. Studies show words that took more effort to recall were remembered about 20% better later on.
And that ties into the tip of the tongue feeling, doesn't it? That incredibly frustrating moment when you know the word, but you just can't quite grab it.
Absolutely. TOT moments are gold mines for memory consolidation. Research found that words which triggered that intense TOT struggle were 75% more likely to be remembered long-term.
75%, just from the struggle.
Yes, and if it was a near miss, where you felt so close, the benefit apparently doubles. That struggle primes the brain. The effort itself is the signal.
Okay, my brain hurts just thinking about trying to schedule reviews for thousands of words at that exact perfect moment of challenge.
And you don't have to. That's the whole point of using technology. This is where spaced repetition systems, or SRS, come in. Think software like Anki.
Right, the digital flashcard systems.
Exactly. They are the engine that manages this complex timing for you. You rate how easy or hard it was to recall each card. Based on your feedback, the SRS algorithm calculates the optimal time to show you that card again. If you recall it easily, it pushes the next review away out maybe weeks or months. If you struggle, it shows it to you sooner.
So it automates Principle 4, ensuring you hit that sweet spot of challenging recall without you having to track anything manually.
Precisely. It outsources the complex scheduling, letting you focus on the learning. It mathematically juggles all 5 principles for every single item you're learning.
Okay, that makes SRS sound pretty essential. And the last principle, Principle 5, rewrite the past. What does that mean? Memory isn't fixed.
It's definitely not fixed. That's one of the most fascinating things about memory. It's reconstructive. Every time you successfully recall a memory, say, the word gatto for cat, You aren't just playing back a recording. You are actually rebuilding that memory's neural network in that moment. And as you rebuild it, you strengthen it and you subtly update it with new
Like
context.
associating it with the cat you saw this morning.
Exactly. Or your current mood or the place you're studying. Each recall rewrites and reinforces the memory. It's a living thing.
Okay, but what happens if the recall fails? Like you draw a complete blank on the SRS card. Do you just stare at it forever?
Oh.
Or look at the answer?
Good question. You definitely want to give it a few seconds of effort, embrace that profitable struggle we talked about. But if nothing comes, don't torture yourself endlessly, look at the answer. Because here's the cool part. If you look at the answer, say the picture of the cat for Gatto, right when your brain is still in that active, frustrated, searching state, you create a really powerful learning opportunity. The answer arrives precisely when the brain is primed to receive it, filling that gap. You often form a very strong new trace right then.
So even forgetting, if handled right with immediate feedback, becomes a tool for stronger learning.
Absolutely. Failure plus immediate correction is powerful. The SRS forces this cycle constantly.
Okay, these 5 principles make it memorable, be lazy in initial study, focus on recall, time recall for difficulty, and rewrite memories. They provide a powerful framework for beating forgetting. And the SRS is the tool that makes it manageable.
That's the core memory engine. Now let's talk about the first content you need to feed into that engine.
Right. So we've got the memory science down. Phase 1 of the actual language learning process, according to this method, starts not with grammar, not with basic phrases, but with sound. Why start there?
Because if you get the sounds wrong, if you can't hear the distinctions properly or produce them accurately, you're setting yourself up for a massive headache later. You essentially end up learning 2 languages, the one you read and the completely different one that people actually speak. This leads straight into what the source calls the broken word trap.
The broken word trap. Okay, explain that. It sounds like something many learners fall into, especially if they start by reading a lot.
Oh, it's incredibly common. Think about, say, a student learning French primarily through books. They read about the philosopher Descartes. In their head, maybe influenced by English spelling, they pronounce it Descartes, sounding out that final S and T.
Okay, makes sense based on the spelling.
But then they go to France or listen to a lecture and everyone's saying Descartes. The S and T are silent. Suddenly, the word they hear has no connection to the word they've mentally stored from reading hundreds of times. It's broken.
And that disconnect probably happens with tons of words, creating constant confusion and slowing down comprehension.
Massively. If you don't nail the sound system early, every single word you learn has this potential vulnerability. You're building on a shaky foundation.
So phase 1 is about building a rock-solid phonetic foundation, making sure written words and spoken words are perfectly aligned in your brain.
Exactly. And that involves training 3 things. Your ears, your mouth, and even your eyes. Hashtag of A. Training your ears. Minimal pairs.
Let's start with the ears. How do we train our ears to hear sounds that might not even exist in English?
Well, the fascinating thing is, as babies, we can hear practically all the phonetic distinctions used in any human language, maybe around 800 different sounds or phones.
Yeah, 800.
But as we grow up learning our native language, our brain performs what's called perceptual narrowing. It learns to ignore sound variations that aren't meaningful in our language.
So English speakers might ignore the difference between 2 subtly different T sounds in Hindi, because in English, it doesn't change the word's meaning.
Precisely. Or we struggle with French nasal vowels or tones in Mandarin because our brains have essentially filtered them out as irrelevant noise.
But the source mentions that famous rock experiment. That suggests adult brains can be retrained, right?
Yes, absolutely. Japanese speakers typically struggle to distinguish English R and L sounds because Japanese uses a sound sort of in between. In the experiment, adult Japanese listeners were repeatedly exposed to words differing only by R or R, like rock versus lock. These are called minimal pairs.
Minimal pairs words that differ by just one single sound.
Exactly. And they got immediate feedback, a ding for correct identification, a buzz for incorrect. And remarkably, after relatively short focused training sessions, their brains physically rewired. They learned to reliably hear the difference.
So the technique is to find minimal pair lists for your target language words, like French niece and nishnook,
Or Spanish pero, but en pero.
and drill them with audio and immediate feedback, forcing your brain to notice that one tiny, crucial difference.
That's the core of ear training. It directly attacks the brain's filtering mechanism and rebuilds your auditory perception for the new language. ##B, training your mouth, accent as empathy.
Okay, ears trained. Now, the mouth. The method puts a really strong emphasis on developing a good accent early on. It calls it the ultimate gesture of empathy.
It is. A good accent shows respect, it builds rapport. People are generally more patient and helpful if they feel you're genuinely trying to speak their way. But beyond the social aspect, it's intensely practical.
How so?
Two main reasons. First, if your accent is really hard to understand, native speakers are far more likely to just switch to English on you.
Which totally kills your opportunity to
Yeah.
practice and get that precious input.
Exactly. It shuts down the learning process. Second, and this is crucial, bad pronunciation habits fossilize really quickly. If you wait 6 months or a year to work on your accent, you've already practiced mispronouncing every single word in your vocabulary hundreds, maybe thousands of times.
Ouch. Undoing that sounds way harder than learning it right the first time.
Exponentially harder. You're fighting against deeply ingrained muscle memory. It's far better to build the right habits from day one.
Okay, but some sounds or combinations are just incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
The source mentions that Russian word "vzdragnu," 4 consonants in a row. How do you even approach that without tying your tongue in knots?
Yeah, these drognu are to flinch. That's a tough one. Consonant clusters like that are common roadblocks. The trick here is an old singer's technique called backchaining.
Backchaining, so you work backwards.
Exactly. Instead of starting at the beginning, vis derbra, and inevitably stumbling, you start at the very end, the most stable part. So for vis drognu, you'd start with just the end sound. Nu. Get comfortable with that.
Okay.
Then add the consonant just before it. Nu. Practice that transition. Nu.
New. Okay, I can do that.
Then add the next one back. Rognu.
Rognu. Rog.
Yeah.
Getting trickier.
Keep going. Drognu, drognu.
I try.
And finally, add that initial V's sound. V's drognu.
Vzdragnu.
V's drognu. Wow, okay, it actually works. Starting from the end makes the difficult transitions feel more manageable somehow.
It does. Because you're isolating and practicing the hardest parts first, building up the muscle memory incrementally from a stable base. It's incredibly effective for complex clusters. #tag C. Training your eyes. IPA.
Ears, mouth, now eyes. Why do we need to train our eyes for sound? Isn't reading just about recognizing letters?
Not if the spelling system is misleading, which it often is. Think about English. We see the word listen, but we don't pronounce that T, do we?
No. Or night, with the silent K and ache.
Exactly. Or think about the different sounds the letter A makes in cat, car, cake, call. English spelling is notoriously inconsistent. Relying on it to guess pronunciation in a new language is asking for trouble. So how do we bridge that gap between inconsistent spelling and actual sound?
With a standardized system. The International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA.
ITA. Those funny symbols you sometimes see in dictionaries. Looks complicated.
It looks a bit intimidating at first, I grant you, but it's incredibly powerful because it's unambiguous. One symbol equals one specific sound. Always. Learning the IPA chart relevant to your target language means you have a decoder ring. You see a new word in your SRS or textbook, along with its IPA transcription.
And you know exactly how it's supposed to sound, regardless of how wacky the spelling looks.
Precisely. It tells you the precise tongue position, lip shape, airflow, everything you need to reproduce the sound accurately. It bypasses misleading approximations like writing French bonjour as bon J-U-R-E.
But is it really worth the effort, learning a whole new alphabet just to learn a language?
It absolutely is, because of a slightly counterintuitive aspect of learning. The more different angles or modalities you use to learn something, its spelling, its actual sound, its IPA symbol, the physical feeling of making the sound in your mouth, the less total effort it takes to lock it into memory.
So adding IPA isn't just extra work. It actually makes the sound easier to remember because you're creating more connections, more hooks in the brain.
Exactly. You're layering the information, making the memory richer and more robust. IPA ensures your reading practice constantly reinforces your listening and speaking practice rather than undermining it.
Okay, phase 1 complete. We've theoretically trained our ears, mouth, and eyes to handle the sounds accurately. Now we move to phase 2. Actually learning words and their meanings. You used that great analogy earlier. Hearing dog in English triggers a whole symphony of associations. Furry, loyal, barking, walks in the park, maybe your childhood pet.
Right, a rich, complex web of meaning.
But when we just learn the Russian word sobaka equals dog, that symphony collapses.
It collapses into a single weak link. A terrible, out-of-tune horn solo, as the source puts it. Using your native language as a bridge, as an intermediary, is the critical mistake here. When you see or hear gato, your brain must go directly to the concept of a cat, the visual, the feel, the sound, not detour through the English word cat.
Skipping the middleman, creating a direct link between the foreign word and the actual meaning.
That's the goal. Mimic how kids learn they point at a dog and hear dog, not dog means chin.
So how do we choose which words to learn first using this direct link method? Just open a dictionary.
No, definitely not. Dictionaries are overwhelming, and typical frequency lists often start with abstract words like society or government, or tricky grammar words like although or therefore.
They're hard to visualize directly.
Exactly. They're hard to turn into those memorable pizza memories. So the strategy here is very specific. Target the 625 most frequent concrete nouns, verbs, and adjectives.
Concrete words like
Dog, cat, tree, run, jump, eat, big, small, red, blue, things you can easily picture.
okay, that makes sense. Easy to visualize, easy to make memorable. How do we learn them without English?
You put them into your SRS, like Anki, using pictures instead of English translations.
So the front of the card has the foreign word, and maybe it's IPA, and the back has just a picture of a dog.
Just a picture, or maybe several pictures to show variety. This forces your brain to make that direct connection. Foreign word, nest concept image. No English involved. Hashtag the two games to boost meaning.
Okay, using pictures is clever. But how do we make sure the meaning we attach is rich and accurate and not just a generic image? The source talks about games for this.
Right, because just seeing a picture isn't always enough. We need to engage more deeply. Game one is spot the differences using Google Images.
How does that work?
When you learn a new word, say the Russian word for girl, devushka, don't just find one picture. Go to Google Images and search for devushka in Russian.
Okay, what will I see?
You might see something different from just searching for girl in English. Maybe the Russian results skew towards, I don't know, slightly more formal portraits or specific types of images. The source gives an example of noticing lots of odd close-up shots.
So you're not just learning the word, you're getting a glimpse into cultural connotations or subtle nuances of meaning.
Exactly. You might notice that devushka implies maybe young lady or girlfriend more often than just a neutral girl. That moment where the image results don't quite match your expectation, that moment.
That's the amygdala kicking in again. The surprise makes it memorable.
Precisely. That little jolt of, that's interesting, weird, helps sear the word and its specific cultural flavor into your memory. You're spotting the differences in meaning through images.
Clever. And the second game.
Game two is the memory game, focusing on personal connection. This directly taps into that levels of processing principle we discussed.
Making it relevant to my life.
Absolutely. Don't just link Gato to a generic cat picture. Link it specifically to your neighbor's grumpy cat that always glares at you.
Or link train to that specific, memorable, maybe awful train journey you took last summer.
Yes. Find a vivid personal memory, even a small one, related to the word's concept. Then, on the back of your SRS card, below the picture, write a tiny trigger phrase for that memory, like grumpy cat glare or sweaty Naples train.
So when you review the card, you're not just recalling the word, you're activating a personal memory associated with it.
Which makes the recall effortful in the right way and anchors the word deeply within your existing neural architecture. It makes the word meaningful to you, not just an abstract item to memorize. Hashtag dealing with nonsense grammar, the gender of a turnip.
Okay, pictures and personal memories work great for concrete things like cats and trains. But what about the aspects of language that seem completely arbitrary and, well, nonsensical? Like grammatical gender. Mark Twain's famous rant about German comes to mind. Why is a turnip female, but a girl is neuter? It seems totally random.
It often feels completely random to English speakers because we don't have grammatical gender in the same way. And trying to learn it by rote, just memorizing lists like der, des for German articles, is incredibly tedious and ineffective.
Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for bare memories, shallow and forgettable.
Totally. So we need another game. Game 3, the mnemonic imagery game. We need to make this abstract, nonsensical information concrete, vivid, and multisensory.
Mnemonic imagery, like using crazy mental pictures.
Exactly. The more bizarre, violent, or emotionally charged, the better, because that engages more of your brain and sticks like glue. The key is consistency. Assign a specific, vivid action or image to each gender.
Okay, give me an example. For German's 3 genders.
Yeah.
Masculine,
Mm-hmm.
feminine,
Hmm.
die Neuter das.
You could decide that all masculine nouns explode, all feminine nouns catch fire, and all neuter nouns shatter like glass.
Whoa, okay. So for der Hund, masculine dog, I picture a dog literally exploding, bits flying everywhere.
Yep, gory details help. For die Katze, feminine cat, you picture your cat bursting into flames, a flaming fur ball.
And for das Mädchen, neuter girl. The girl shatters into a million pieces. That seems extreme.
It is extreme, and that's why it works. It bypasses your logical brain. This makes no sense, and encodes the grammatical information directly into a powerful, unforgettable visual and emotional tag.
So when I'm trying to recall the gender of dog later, I don't consciously think is dog masculine. I just access the concept dog, and the image of the exploding dog pops into my head automatically.
Exactly. The image is the gender information encoded viscerally. You retrieve the image, and the image tells you it's dar. It makes recalling gender almost effortless and automatic over time, rather than a constant, painful lookup process. It turns abstract grammar into memorable PZZA.
Right. We've tackled memory, sound, and building that core vocabulary without relying on English. Now we're getting into the big leagues. Phase 3, absorbing grammar, and Phase 4, actually speaking fluently. The method talks about this idea of a language machine in our brains, like something that's always running, always processing language input.
That's a great way to think about it. It refers to our brain's incredible subconscious ability to detect patterns, track frequencies, and figure out grammatical rules just from exposure to the language. It's how babies learn grammar without ever opening a textbook.
They just absorb tons of input, and the rules sort of emerge.
Exactly. And fascinatingly, research shows that adults learning a second language go through the exact same predictable developmental stages as children learning their first.
Like really? The exact same stages?
Yep. For instance, English learners reliably go through a stage where they say things like, he is eating carrot, using the ing form correctly but missing the article a or the. Only later do they consistently master articles and produce, he is eating the carrot or he eats the cheeseburger.
So you can't just skip those stages by memorizing grammar rules, like drilling verb conjugations won't magically make you produce perfect sentences overnight?
Nope. Drilling grammar rules gives you explicit knowledge about the language. You can explain the rule, but it doesn't necessarily build the implicit automatic skill of using the language correctly. That language machine, that pattern detector, it doesn't run on explicit rules. It runs on comprehensible input, CI. Massive amounts of it.
Comprehensible input language that you mostly understand, maybe with a little bit of challenge, often called Y plus $1.
Right. Input is the fuel. Grammar drills often fail because they spend 90% of the time explaining the rules,
Right.
and only 10% providing actual language examples, the I. The machine starves.
Okay, so the goal is to flood the language machine with comprehensible input. How do we do that efficiently as adults, leveraging the fact that we can already read?
This is where grammar books actually become useful, but not for the exercises.
Not for the drills. Then for what?
For the well-translated example sentences. Look for books that provide lots of examples with clear, ideally literal translations. Seeing something like French voulez-vous un cookie paired directly with a literal gloss like want you a cookie is fantastic CI. It shows the structure in action in context.
So use the grammar book for quick explanations to understand the patterns you're seeing in the input, not for memorizing the rules themselves.
Exactly. A basic grasp of the rules helps you make sense of more complex input. Turning odd plus 5 down plus a letter 1, it helps you chunk the language logically. #tag reading and listening for massive input.
So where do we get this massive amount of CI?
Phase 3 is all about input. And the simplest, most accessible source for adults is reading. Just reading extensively in your target language, even without constantly stopping for a dictionary, is one of the best ways to grow your passive vocabulary.
Passive vocabulary, meaning words you recognize when you see them, but might not be able to produce yourself yet.
Right. Context does a lot of the teaching. You see a new word multiple times in different sentences, and you start to get the gist of it. The source estimates you can pick up 300, 500 new words passively just by reading one novel.
That sounds great, but reading a whole novel in a foreign language, especially early on, can feel daunting. You hit unknown words constantly, get bogged down, lose the plot. It's easy to get discouraged.
Totally. Stopping every few seconds to look things up kills the flow and enjoyment. That's why there's a specific technique recommended, particularly for your first few books. Choose a book you've already read and enjoyed in English, maybe something like Harry Potter or The Hunger Games. Get the physical copy in your target language.
Okay.
And simultaneously listen to the audiobook version in that language while you read along.
Read and listen at the same time.
Yes. The audiobook acts like a pacemaker. It pulls you through the difficult sentences where you might otherwise get stuck and frustrated. You don't have to understand every single word. Plus, you're getting massive exposure to correct pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation, which reinforces all that phase one sound training. And your subconscious language machine is just soaking up grammatical patterns constantly.
That sounds much more manageable and effective than just staring at dense text. What about pure listening input, like TV or movies?
Great source of input, but you need to be strategic. First rule, absolutely no English subtitles.
None. Why not? They seem helpful.
They seem helpful, but they're actually a crutch that prevents learning. Your brain just reads the English and tunes out the foreign audio. It becomes reading practice in English, not listening practice in the target language.
Okay, no English subtitles. What should we watch?
Avoid comedies initially. Humor is often very culturally specific and relies on subtle wordplay that's hard to catch. Instead, go for things with clear visual context and relatively straightforward plots. Dubbed action shows are often recommended, something like the show 24 dubbed into French, 24 Heures Chrono, or Spanish. The plots are usually simple enough. He's chasing the bad guy, he's disarming the bomb, that you can follow along visually.
And the dubbing quality is usually pretty good these days.
Often very good, especially for major languages and popular shows. It provides clear, consistent, natural-sounding speech.
Now, there was a really smart pro tip in the source material for maximizing comprehension before you even start watching or reading something new.
Yes, this is brilliant. Before you watch that episode of 24 Heures Chrono, or before you read the next chapter of your book, go to Wikipedia or a similar site and read the plot summary in the target language.
Read the summary first, like spoilers.
Exactly. Spoil yourself. By reading the summary beforehand, you essentially preload your brain with the key vocabulary, character names, and plot points you're about to encounter.
So when you then watch or read the actual thing, way more of it is comprehensible from the start because you already have the context.
Precisely. It dramatically increases the amount of Y plus 11 input you get from the experience. You're not wasting mental energy trying to figure out what's happening. You can focus on how it's being said.
Yeah.
Maximum fuel for the language machine.
We've covered input overload. But fluency isn't just about understanding, is it? It's about speaking. Phase 4, output.
Right. Input builds your knowledge base, your passive understanding. Output is where you activate that knowledge and build fluency, the ability to actually use the language spontaneously.
And the key skill here, according to the source, isn't knowing every single word. It's improvisation.
It's the ability to talk around the words you don't know, to keep communicating even when your vocabulary fails you. Think about the board game Taboo. You have to describe a word without using that word, or several related forbidden words.
Right, like describing baseball without saying bat, ball, base, or pitcher.
Exactly. You're forced to be creative. It's that American sport, played on a diamond shape, players wear hats, they hit a white sphere with a wooden stick.
And that skill, that ability to paraphrase and circumlocute, is crucial for real-world fluency.
It's arguably the definition of functional fluency. You'll never know every word. Fluent speakers are just really good at improvising when they hit a gap. So the golden rule for output practice is no English allowed. Force yourself to stay in the target language.
When you're stuck for a word, you have to find another way to express the idea using the words and grammar you do know.
Yes. This does two vital things. One, it forces you to activate and strengthen the vocabulary and grammatical structures you already possess, even the weaker ones. Two, it breaks the crippling habit of constantly trying to translate word for word from English in your head, which is slow and unnatural.
Okay, so where do we get this pressure cooker no English practice?
You need to actively seek out opportunities. Online language exchange platforms are great for this. Sites like italki, Verbling, HelloTalk connect you with native speakers for conversation practice.
Short, focused conversation sessions where you're forced to speak.
Exactly. And for writing practice, sites like Lang8 or its successors like Journaly are fantastic. You write journal entries or texts in your target language, and native speakers correct your mistakes.
And then the crucial step. What do you do with those corrections?
You don't just read them and forget them. You immediately turn each correction into a new flashcard for your SRS.
So if you wrote, I go to shop, and someone corrected it to, I go to the shop, you make a card testing that specific correction.
Precisely. Maybe a closed deletion card, like I go to shop. This creates a perfect feedback loop. Your output errors generate perfectly tailored I plus dollar in input, the correction, that gets fed directly back into your SRS for spaced recall.
Meaning you learn from your mistakes systematically and are much less likely to make the same mistake again.
It's an incredibly efficient way to turn output practice into concrete targeted learning. You're constantly refining your internal grammar based on real-world feedback. #outro.
Okay, what a journey. We've really dismantled the traditional approach and built up a new one based on, well, how the brain actually works. We started with the neuroscience beating and straighter, forgetting using those 5 memory principles and the SRS.
Making memories memorable, recalling instead of reviewing, timing it right.
Then we tackled the sound barrier head-on, training ears with minimal pairs, mouths with techniques like backchaining, and eyes with IPA to avoid the broken word trap.
Building that solid phonetic foundation first, crucial.
Phase 2 is about building vocabulary directly, without English translation, using pictures for the core 625 concrete words, and using those clever games Google Images for context, personal memories for connection, and bizarre mnemonic imagery for tricky grammar like gender.
Turning abstract concepts into unforgettable PIZA memories.
And finally, phases 3 and 4, feeding that subconscious language machine with massive comprehensible input through strategic reading and listening,
Using audiobooks, reading summaries first.
and then activating it all through output practice, playing that real-life game of taboo, forcing improvisation, and using feedback to constantly refine our knowledge via the SRS.
It's a complete system, really, from memory principles right through to fluent output. And, beyond just the ability to order coffee or read a novel in another language, there's a profound bonus to all this effort. It's often called the bilingual effect.
Yes, the idea that learning language is actually good for your brain's health.
It's more than just good. It's like targeted strength training for your executive functions.
Yeah.
Constantly managing 2 languages, suppressing one while activating the other, choosing the right words. This requires intense focus, cognitive flexibility, and control. It builds cognitive reserve.
Like lifting weights for your prefrontal cortex.
Exactly. And this isn't just theory. The real-world impact is significant, especially concerning aging.
What did the studies show?
They're quite remarkable, actually. Multiple large-scale studies consistently show that lifelong bilinguals, on average, develop symptoms of dementia and Alzheimer's disease 5 years later than comparable monolinguals.
5 years. That's huge. Just from the mental workout of juggling languages.
It seems so. That cognitive reserve, that brain flexibility built up over years, appears to make the brain significantly more resilient to neurodegenerative decline. It delays the onset of noticeable symptoms.
Wow. Okay, so learning a language isn't just about communication or travel anymore. It's a long-term investment in your brain's health and resilience. That's incredibly motivating.
It really is. It reframes the whole endeavor.
And maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with. Beyond the cognitive benefits, beyond the practical skills, there's something else, isn't there? Something more personal.
I think so. Language learning, it does something to you. When you start to operate in another language, you're not just translating your thoughts. You're accessing different ways of seeing the world, different cultural frameworks.
You start to see nuances you never noticed before.
You do. And sometimes you even discover different facets of your own personality that seem to emerge more easily in the new language. Maybe you're funnier in Spanish or more direct in German.
More open side of yourself, maybe?
Perhaps. It opens doors not just to other cultures, but potentially within yourself as well. It's good for the soul, you could say. It connects you. And that connection, that new perspective, might just be the most valuable reward of all.
A fantastic thought to end on. So the message is clear. Use these techniques, beat forgetting, build your language machine, and discover that new mind waiting for you. Thanks for diving deep with us today.